Good Thursday, family and friends, on this fourth week of Easter. Yes, we are still within the Easter season. But today, April 25th, within the Easter season, we honor St. Mark, the evangelist, writer of the first gospel. And I emphasize that because for the longest time, scripture scholars thought that Matthew's gospel was written first. And that's why we refer to it as, and even in the Bible, it's listed Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But when they realized that Mark's gospel was actually written first, it was too late to change the canon, and people were so used to saying Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, we were never getting to reverse it to say Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John. So it stays the way it is, but Mark's was the very first gospel written. And as I mentioned to them at Mass this morning, it's interesting, we're not exactly sure, but we think that Mark's gospel is actually the recollections of St. Peter, because the first letter of Peter that we read also at morning's Mass talked about the traveling companion that went around with Peter, someone by the name of John Mark. And we presume that that Mark and the Mark of the writing of the gospel are the same person. But the other interesting thing about Mark's gospel is that there are two endings to his gospel. There's the one that he actually wrote, and there's one that was added decades later, because the ending that Mark wrote ends with the resurrection, Jesus coming out of the tomb, appearing to the women, and telling the women to go tell the disciples that he's risen and he's going to meet them in Galilee. But Mark ends it with, the women left the tomb frightened, fearful, and they said nothing to anyone. So I guess some community later on decided that wasn't a good ending. So they added a second ending to Mark's gospel that leads all the way up to the ascension and Jesus commissioning the apostles to go forward and now proclaim the gospel message to all the lands, which sounds like a better ending than these fearful women not saying anything to anyone. So Mark's is the one with two different endings, the one he wrote and the one that was added later. So today we celebrate Mark the evangelist at Mass in our prayers. This coming weekend, the fifth Sunday of Easter, we begin, for me, the most joyous time during the Easter festival. We begin the celebrations of First Holy Communions here at Our Lady of the Valley. And so communions will be celebrated, First Communions will be celebrated at the Masses this weekend, and there'll be several children at each Mass except the 8 a.m., so that's the 5 on Saturday, the 10 and the 12 on Sunday. And the children and their families will have reserved seats toward the front of the church. And so I know many of us were creatures of habit. We like to sit in the same seats, but the first couple rows in the front of the church here at Our Lady of the Valley will be reserved for the children and their families receiving First Holy Communion. So we'll have to make some adjustments to that. So I know I said people like to sit in the same seats, and it always reminds me when I was a student in seminary, obviously a long time ago, the faculty would always tell us seminarians, it's not good to sit in the same seat in chapel, particularly for morning prayer and evening prayer. You should move around. And I laugh about that because I was one of the organists and also the director of music when I was in seminary. And for the morning prayer and evening prayer is interesting. After playing the hymn, I would simply turn around on the organ bench and look down at the chapel, and everyone was seated in the same place every day, including the faculty, and they're the ones who told us that we should actually move around. So I always joke when we say we're creatures of habit, we like to sit in the same place. But even the celebrations of First Holy Communion bring up wonderful memories for all of us when we remember our own First Communion, no matter how long ago it was. And I know I've shared this with you before, but it always makes me glad about it. When I celebrated my very first Holy Communion, it was back in 1961. We belonged to St. Aloysius Church in Caldwell. We lived in West Caldwell. And I don't remember, but I guess the parish was very large. I don't remember how large it was. But on the day of my first Holy Communion, the girls sat on one side of the church, the boys sat on the other side of the church, and we all sat together. We didn't sit with our families. And on the boys' side, I was number 77 in line. Now, granted, we were lined up height-wise, and I wasn't the shortest, but I neither was the highest. There were, boys behind me. So you figure that at least 150, 160 or more students receiving First Holy Communion that day. And it was a Saturday morning. The Mass was at 9 a.m. And the thing I remember about it that was most interesting, that was the day, the only day, we got to enter into the sanctuary area. Remember, we had the altar rail and the gates and so forth, but we didn't kneel at the altar rail for our First Holy Communion. We actually entered into the sanctuary, went up and knelt on the top step of the high altar, right behind the priest, and he simply turned around to give us our First Holy Communion. And that was the only time we ever got to enter into the sanctuary of the church. But, the rules were very different back then, but those are wonderful memories. And then after the Mass, I simply went home with my family, and we had a very nice breakfast celebration, because we had the fast before, and it was simply my mother, my father, my sister, my brother, myself, and my mother's grandparents, who are my godparents at baptism. So it was a very simple celebration, but a wonderful celebration of First Holy Communion. So when I celebrate with the children these Sundays, it always brings back memories of my own First Holy Communion. So I hope it does for you too. Those of you who are in church this Sunday, when you see the children receiving communion for the first time, it'll bring back wonderful memories of the very first time you received communion as a young child. So we begin them this weekend. It's the most joyous time during the Easter festival. Also, this coming Saturday is the last chance to register for next year's Faith Formation program for the next academic year. Registration will take place this Saturday between 9 and 11 over by the parish center. You don't have to get out of your car. You'll simply drive up. Someone will come up to your car to get the information from you, and off you'll go. It's a very easy process. We've already had 2. This Saturday is the final day to register for Faith Formation for the coming year. But also as part of Faith Formation, as you know, we do need catechists to help us in teaching the classes. And I've said this before, and it's so very, very important. The most important thing we do as Roman Catholics is pass on the faith to the next generations that come after us. It's a wonderful opportunity. It's an important opportunity. So if by chance you feel called to assist us as a catechist, a teacher in the Faith Formation program, just contact the parish offices. We will get information from you, and we will get you into the class that is most suited for you. And sometimes we have 2 teachers per class, like team teaching, so it makes it very easy. So please consider becoming a catechist for our children. As I said, it's the most important thing we do, passing on the faith to the generations that come after us. And also now, it's amazing how fast the days are moving along. Our annual family festival is fast approaching. It's going to be on Tuesday, May 14th through Sunday, May 19th. It's nice that we're going to celebrate it this year during the Easter season. So it's a wonderful way to continue celebrating Easter, coming to the festival, enjoying the day with family and friends, with the rides, the games, the wonderful food. But as always, we need volunteers to help us to make it a wonderful success. And every year our volunteers have really stepped up to assist us, and it's good to have so many volunteers to make the workload a little bit easier. So if by chance you have not yet returned your volunteer form, they're available in church, or they're available on the website. We can get you assigned a day or 2 days or more days. We've already had several people sign up for several days. It's wonderful to be able to do that, to assist with our annual family festival, because it's wonderful to see so many thousands of people come here to Our Lady of the Valley to enjoy our festival. We're one of the first ones in the area, so which is it really gets people into the spring and the summer mode. But also our 50-50 raffle is now very near $8,000. So make sure you get your raffle tickets back. Let's see how high we can get the 50-50 raffle before the actual festival begins, because it really takes off during the festival. And it's amazing on that final day, when we get to that last half hour before the drawing, how many people converge on the ticket booth to buy 50-50 raffle tickets. I guess they have the idea, if I'm in the last ticket in the bin, I have a better chance of winning. But let's see how high we can get it this year. It'd be wonderful to get it up over $30,000. It'd be a wonderful thing this year. So we look forward to the festival. So enjoy the rest of this week, these wonderful days. The weather is lovely, and hopefully you'll have wonderful weather this weekend as we begin the celebrations of First Holy Communion. Have a good day. Thanks for listening.